I'm excited to chat with Nikki Cornfield today on the Awaken Feminine podcast. Nikki is a certified reflexologist, iridologist, and holistic health coach, educating in all areas of natural health and healing, especially detoxing, fasting, juicing, water fasting, and plant based nutrition. She's also the certified Yoga Alliance ISHTA yoga and meditation teacher and Reiki energy healing practitioner. Nikki is passionate about assisting others to be empowered to take charge of their own healing powers to heal themselves naturally. And I know she has so much love and wisdom to share with us. She's a fellow Perthie, so she's in Perth in Australia like me. So it's really nice to be able to podcast at a decent hour of the day. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, not that I'm complaining, but usually I'm like early, really early mornings or really late night interviews. So I don't usually get a 1 o'clock in the afternoon interview, which is really nice. So Nikki, before we dive into our conversation, I always love to ask my guests this one question, and that is, what is your definition of awakened feminine?
Somebody who is really aware of self and is taking the lead in the direction that they want to go to, just on a really authentic level. What they're feeling inside is the direction, and not what the pressure is from other people, what society is saying, what other people's the opinions of other people, and guidance is all very well, but it often knocks us off the course. So yeah, it's being awake to who am I in this world, and where am I going, and what do I want to achieve while I'm here, uh,
Mm.
and sitting in the alignment of that. That's the alignment that's the key here. Yeah.
That's a beautiful definition. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, Nikki, I'd love to talk a bit more about you, obviously, because this is the point of the podcast. So, can you share with us a bit more about, what you do and why you do what you do?
For me, if I can backstory a little bit, it's been quite a journey, because I moved around the world with my husband's career. So I did actually lose my own identity quite far back, I would say. And that's been my driving force now at this time, is to empower other women who, it's easy for when you have a family to really, what you want takes a bit of a back seat. And so I now see my journey as being one of, gaining wisdom and knowledge, and making me who I am today. But that's been the driving force now to, okay, well, I've got to really show up with this knowledge and this wisdom, all these things I've learned on the way, and it was obviously for a reason, to give me this knowledge now. So yeah, it's a huge fire inside me that seems to be adding. I keep adding logs to it, because it's been a struggle to break through from an expat wife and mum to what I feel I want to do now. And so, I've written a memoir recently, which was the struggles of what I've gone through to get to this point. So yeah, it's a big story. So it had to be shared, but mainly it was for my own transformation, so I can help others. And I really see that now. I've come to the end of it. That wow, that was for me to help others, rather than just get my story down. It was a much bigger picture in the end than I realized.
Mm. I want to ask you how you said backtracking to, you followed your husband traveling and losing your identity. How long, like, has it been? When did you start losing your identity? I think that's the question. Like, how long ago was that? And how long did it take you to kind of start questioning and finding yourself again?
I think initially, I probably buried it a little bit. I moved with a small baby, and as a newly married, I was newly married, fairly newly married, a child quite quickly after that. And I think when you're at that point, you don't really ask yourself those questions. What do I want, and what will this lead to if I take this step, moving abroad? I didn't do any of that. I was quite naive at that time, but we are talking 20 odd years ago, 20 years ago. Oh my goodness. So, yeah. And then I got involved with a big group of expat women who were all in the same boat. So I formed my identity, as one of them. So I didn't really question it until we moved again to Australia, and then again to Asia, and then again back to Australia. And it was actually when I was just about to turn 50 that it hit me like a ton of bricks that, wow, there was a lot of layers of unresolved grief from all this moving around that I hadn't looked at. And it was the catalyst for returning to being a writer as the tool to unlock the grief and start writing the stories. And that was when I realized I was actually tapping back into a gift that I'd shown as a child as a writer. And it was like my soul was going, well, now we're going to show you what you're here for. You actually had to do all that journey first to get to this point. And yeah, it was part of the spiritual awakening process as well. It was huge. It was like a big volcano eruption, really. And the only way through the grief was to write about it. And it revealed a whole big picture of, wow, that was a journey to wisdom and knowledge and spiritual awakening. There was a reason behind it. So yeah, that I would say turning 50 was the big point where that had to come up and out. Otherwise, it would have just it would have led to disease and physical things. I was already starting to show shoulder and neck and back problems, and it was definitely because I wasn't aligned with the real message that needed to come through from that journey. So it's big. It was very big. It was.
Wow. Um, I wanted to ask you, was there something that sparked this awakening? Like, did something happen? Or was it more like, oh my gosh, I'm turning 50 and it just kind of happened?
No, it was gradual stages. I think I when we moved to Singapore from Perth, it was the first time where I'd help with the children, and I was able to really, the thing I wanted to do is to be a yoga teacher. But what it was east and west fusion, where I actually needed to go to the east to start the understanding of the spiritual awakening. And looking back, it was that move to Asia from Perth the first time we were here that started that process. But it was really actually what it was we were renovating a house in the hills. We were trying to make Adelaide a home, and we need to put these roots down and this is where we're going to stay. And my daughter was really unhappy, and the seasons were very much like the UK. And I think what it did was as an empath, I was fully into the emotions of the weather changes and the wind and the rain. It reminded me of home, the UK, and that's when it came up. So it was, the sensitivity, this empath. I didn't even know what an empath was, but I was working on these life stories with a friend who ran a workshop, and she went, "Oh, do you realize you're an empath?" I'm going, "What the heck's one of those?" And it opened up a whole, again, this self-awareness. It was like, oh, that really makes me understand why every time I moved, the wind affected me, the rain affected me. So it was really this, I definitely think it was the moving to Adelaide, and it was the final layer of grief. It was just that bit too much. I think we moved away from an expat community in Singapore, which again had given me that identity. And being in Adelaide was very parochial, was very, I wouldn't say narrow-minded. I don't want to put a label on it, but I was different. I was an expat in a non-expat place. And so I had no identity. I felt different. I felt they were asking me, what do I do for a job? And I couldn't answer them. I didn't know. The kids didn't know who they were. So it was this whole layers were coming up. And it had to happen. I don't think we could have gone around Adelaide. It happened for a reason. That move was definitely, it was. I believe that was all part of the stepping stones that got the book writing and everything else that followed. So, but I didn't like that process at all.
Yeah, I know. When a lot of times we look back and you're like, oh, we had to go through that. But when you're in the midst of it, you're like, why?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I wanted to, this keeps popping up in my head, is to ask you about the grief. So when people think of grief, they usually think of someone's passed away and they grieve that person.
yeah,
Can you talk about the grief that you were feeling and what that related to?
definitely. There's a term in expat world called unresolved grief when every time we move there's another layer of grief. You've said goodbye to people in one country and you've missed family occasions. There's lots of aspects of unresolved grief, and that's really if I come back to your question, which I've forgotten, so you need to remind.
The question is,
Um,
what when people think about grief is about people dying, but
yeah, yeah.
your grief is something different. Can you talk to us what you were grieving about? What
Yeah,
was that grief? Yeah.
you can even call it a kind of dying because it's a dying of I've left family, but not just once. Every time you move to a different country, you're effectively saying goodbye to another family because your family becomes the friends around you when you're in a different country. So it was grief from all the people I've said goodbye to. It was also grief for the second career that I didn't have that I wanted. It was grief for the children, what they'd gone through and what the life that they could have had we not done all the moves. So there was like all this mix. It was like it was layers of murder, but it was mainly me that was feeling them. I don't think my husband he didn't understand what I was going through because he every time they move, they have a job, they have an identity, they're going out to work, and they're not dealing with the same thing. So it was mainly career and family and friendships, but also what if, which we all do. Had we stayed in the UK, what would it have been like? So it's a lot, but
Mm.
if it festers and it stays in, like a lot of people don't understand this unresolved grief. It's not always talked about, but for me, I wanted to expose it and to talk about it because I realized that it was mainly women that were going through it, and expat women in particular.
Mm. I wanted to ask you when, as you said, your husband didn't quite understand. So how did that did it affect your relationship, or did you talk about it? Like how, what were the dynamics in terms of this grieving process that you kind of continuously had to go through each time you moved?
Um, yeah, it was actually resentment, and it wasn't. I wasn't aware of it really until that last move. I just knew that inside I felt frustrated that he was the one always out and I was always the one at home. And because he was working very long hours, being the provider and looking after his family, it was a big drive for him. So he was just doing what he thought was right for him. But for me, it meant that it disempowered me to be able to work or start a second career because of this moving all the time. It's very difficult when you haven't got a mobile career to be able to suddenly come up with one. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion because it has a lot of depth to it, and everybody's situation will be very different. But mine was okay. There's a lot of anger here and resentment. I need to look at this, and I just kind of dealt with it on my own rather than involving him because he wouldn't understand. They're very different. Men think very differently than women. They're not as emotional. They're much more practical. They're kind of like paddle in their own boat because they have to when they move country. They've got their own set of challenges, but it's very different than the women's. The
Mm.
mothers. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask you about children because that's popped up as you were talking. Um, so you started moving around when you had your first child,
Yeah.
and so moving constantly. How did it affect, just to give people an idea, how does it affect their schooling and them like resettling into a new place? Like, how did you find that for them and for you to navigate new schools, like new moms, new,
Mm.
that kind of thing?
Well, these were 6 weeks old when I moved to a foreign country. So middle of winter, new country, new baby. I mean, those three things together. One of those on their own is enough, but three together. But I was fortunate in the Netherlands. There were big companies. There was Shell were there, BHP Billiton. There were big companies. So a big expat community, and the schooling system was international schools. So it was actually that part of it was brilliant. And we were 6 years in the Netherlands, so it gave us time to really root down and make very close friendships. And then I found that because of the six years in one place, that's actually quite a long time to for them to really feel like they're at home. And when children are expats, they find other friendships in expat children. They like deviate towards each other. So I think that worked quite well every time, because when we moved again to Australia, when we moved from the Netherlands to Australia, that was challenging because they went into local schools, and then they're different than the other children. So when we moved to Asia after that, again they're in their zone, because expats meet other expat children. It's almost like they've got a sign above their head. You know, they've got so many things in common, and they recognize themselves in each other. So if I look back, I'd say that part of it was very successful, because I became an expert at understanding what they needed to feel safe, feel connected to others. So yeah, I became very good at it. The difficult part was Adelaide, because they felt different. And that's where it started to go wrong. I went, okay, I need to change this. What can I do to help? And my daughter actually came back to Perth and boarded. And that was huge for me as a mother, to make that decision, with her blessing as well, to move to a boarding school here in Perth while we were still in Adelaide, because I recognized that the school had different teachers from different countries, the children, you know, from outside of Perth, but also in Perth. And she felt at home immediately. So that expertise I got at the end was, how do I navigate children, became very fine-tuned. And then we moved back to Perth to be closer to her, and that's another story in itself. But it's I'd like to help other people with this, because I felt like I got so much experience moving children and how to negotiate schooling and moving them, and what works and what doesn't work and what they needed. And it was mainly me doing that. I became my thing every time we moved, not my husband. It was like, you do that really well, I'll leave that to you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's really great. Thank you for sharing that. I think I mean that those questions kept popping up, but it just felt really important, I think, for whoever's listening to this podcast and finds this interview, that they might be expat mums, or they might be starting their expat journey, and to then get a bit of an overview to what life could be like with children, and navigating the changes that comes with being expat is really helpful. So I wanted to actually jump into all the stuff that you do. Because unless there's anything else you want to talk about in terms of your expat experience, because obviously you've got it, like you're saying, you've got it fine-tuned now. And how long have you been in Perth now?
This is our second time, so 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm actually at the itchy feet stage now,
So
which is, yeah, I'm starting to recognize that usually 3 years you're starting to settle back in, and now we're into the fourth year, and I'm ready to go again. And I've got 3 children now in university, so I'm just going to go and travel now. Yeah,
yeah,
I can't be in one place anymore.
how interesting, like
Yeah,
going from that grief moving around, but then now you're like, I just want to
yeah.
go.
There was huge healing in writing,
Yeah.
and it's ongoing. And I realized that, wow, if I can help other women to write, not necessarily memoir, but story, get life
Mm,
on the page, it's massive, the healing in writing, in getting words onto the page. I
yeah.
think more than anything, actually.
Yeah.
So that was a big revelation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I haven't written like a long book and memoir like yourself, but
It
just
was huge.
having going through like the multi-author book journey, just even writing a chapter, the
Mm.
healing that comes with that. So I can I can imagine how healing it will be writing a full book on your own. Uh yeah. I feel like the expat piece feels complete, because I really want to dive into all the stuff that you do, because you talked about wanting to go, you learned yoga when you were in Singapore, I think you were saying. Is that,
Yeah, I actually
yeah.
traveled back to here. The teacher that I wanted to train with was here when I was here the first time, and I couldn't find a way of doing it. I had 3 children, 3 fairly young children, husband working long hours. As soon as I moved to Singapore, I had help, which was liberating. And I traveled back to Perth and to Bali to train with this teacher. So I had the schools actually here in Perth, and that was amazing for me to have that freedom just to go and really dive in deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first first real, okay, this is my path now. I'm following everything that I want to.
Yeah. So then, okay, so from yoga, and I mean, when I was doing your intro, you're a reflexologist, iridologist, holistic health coach, meditation teacher, Reiki practitioner. Can we talk about that journey of,
Yeah.
really learning and exploring what it is that you want to do and doing it? Yeah.
Well, I'd say through the writing of the memoir was the biggest gift was seeing how big a part my husband had played in the freedom that I had. I turned the grief and the anger, resentment at him all the way around to go, oh wow, if I hadn't had that freedom to follow everything down every tunnel I wanted to, I wouldn't have these experiences. So I trained as a reflexologist when I was pregnant with the Lees in the UK. And then I had this diagnosis of celiac disease when I was 26, which turned again into, I realized the right and the left. So I'm dropping my quartz crystal on the floor.
And are you holding it? Because I hold my amethyst when I'm
dropped it on the floor. So the reflexology, I realized that because I had this natural resonance drawing to natural healing therapies while I was pregnant. And again, it was my soul's direction. I realized that, wow, everything was soul led, even from way back with being pregnant with the Lees. Because when I got diagnosed with celiac at 26, again, that was a gift because I had to follow this simple diet from that age to now, with no real knowledge of why I was eating the way I was. It was just this natural simplifying and eating naturally. So the whole journey to now was done very organically, soul led all the way, to the point where, because I followed that diet to now, it's given me it's kind of like all these slides kept coming when I needed to learn something. Okay, you're ready for this now. The next thing will come along. Like iridology was it's so similar to reflexology, but that was years forward before that came into my, again, we'll call it a slide. And that's how it's been. It's like everything has been like, okay, now you're ready for this, now you're ready to learn this, and the next thing will come along. And it really has been this layering of not only my own personal healing journey naturally through this diagnosis. I don't like the word diagnosis, but we'll call it that. So that was a natural, oh wow, I've actually managed to heal myself. Oh, okay, you ready for this now? You need to know this, you need to know this. And then the Reiki was the very last thing, where I was not really interested in anything like that. I was like, you are going to know this. The Reiki teacher you need to know is going to come in. And it was. I met somebody. Went through yoga teacher training again for the second time when I moved back here, because I could and I wanted to. And I met my friend, and she's a Reiki. And she went, oh, come and do the course with me. I'm teaching it. Oh, of course I need to know this. And it was done. Oh, yes. So that's what it's been like. It really hasn't been a case of acquiring labels or certificates or anything. It's been this natural, I believe, connection to the truth of health on every single level. And then the writing just to top it off.
I love it.
I could see the wisdom and the knowledge that I had to share. Oh, wow, through writing this memoir, crikey, all these things kept getting revealed to me. It was like these epiphanies and serendipities and all the steps I've been taken on naturally, just because I've always been very intuitive. I went to tarot readers when I was 13, 14. I just always knew that there was something bigger out there, but I didn't really have a name for it. But when I wrote the book, I went, oh my goodness me, wow, the stepping stones that I was shown and the signposts, and I just kept following them. I just felt this sort of pull. But again, I wasn't thinking of it from a spiritual aspect at all. I just had this deep sense of knowing, like I was going somewhere. So
Mm.
that, again, we could go off down another rabbit hole about
Oh,
this conversation.
we could,
I
and
know.
maybe we will. Um, I just love that because so many times I think most people, one, don't listen to the intuition. Two, they might go, oh, this opportunity or this thing is presented to me, and then they talk themselves out of it. Did you
Mm,
ever have those happen to, like, when you were showing, like, oh, here's iridology, oh, here's, but you just kind of just, oh, okay, I'll just go with it. Like, was there ever any doubt or any point in your mind where you went, "Mm, am I
no,
really doing this?" No.
none whatsoever. It's felt
Wow.
like me a series of light bulbs, especially when I was in
Mm.
Adelaide. Again, when I look back at the Adelaide, the opportunities that came up when I started listening, really listening. I mean, I had an opportunity to go and be a writer at a global families in global transition conference in the Netherlands during that period. And that was right where I started my expat journey. And I was a resident writer. I mean, for me, that was an opportunity which was just unbelievable. But they were showing me was like these doors were opening. We're going to take you back 360 degrees to where you started, so you understand all this journey. It really felt like that. And then, the person I trained with in holistic health and detoxification and everything, it was a free event that I was drawn to go and see in Adelaide. And it was literally like someone was putting light bulbs on left, right, and center in my brain where I was going, oh my God, I really need to know this. And it connected back to all the things I learned before. It was just, oh my goodness me, wow, intuition, when you've really got it fine tuned and you listen, it really, the doors start appearing in blank walls, and it's almost like the process gets accelerated.
Mm.
That's quite exciting. For me, it was exciting
Yeah.
to see that picture through the book where I went, wow, if everybody could see their life as a series of stepping stones, that really we are given signposts, people do come on our path. And if we're really in tune and aware of them, you start seeing them with so much clarity that for me, it almost makes me laugh now. I go, whoa, it's quite obvious why that person's come now at this time in my life. And then when you follow it, it's exciting because then more things happen. And I think it's very easy to get the mind gets in the way
Mm.
and we start self-doubting, but I don't do that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I
That
feel
is
the expansion
amazing.
inside. It's like
Mm.
the expansion you feel inside is very different than that doubt, that contraction, that negative feeling that you get when something isn't right. And for me, inside feels very different when it's right or whether it's just there. It's like, whoa, I feel excited and joyful and happy. And it's almost a giddy excitement. Whereas it
Mm.
doesn't feel like that if something's wrong. Like, your whole body's just like in resistance.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk a bit more about trusting and intuition? Because you obviously is someone that just trusts. I so what's my question? How do you, because it sounds like you were someone that just have always been quite intuitive and you just followed, the path without any doubt. You just did it. But you also said that you fine tune and really listen more and more. So how can someone be more intuitive or listen more to their intuition? Is there like a something that can help them, especially for those people who just don't?
I definitely think, I mean, meditation and quiet time for sure. It's shutting out the noise is a first. Because if you're always on a phone or always listening to the people, always in busy places, never in nature, you're disconnected from that self, that intuition. It doesn't have room to speak. So there has to be quietness. For me, things just drop in. Like even at night when I'm sleeping, I'll hear a voice. It sounds like I'm crazy, but it's starting now that I'm clairaudient as well as clairsentient feeling, and
Mm.
I hear things that are dropping in more and more. But that's because I'm really conscious of like quiet time. alone time,
Yeah.
even if it's just sitting, eyes shut, call it what you want, doesn't matter. But that then an intuition has room, and then it gets louder, and it has more room to come in, basically. And
Mm.
I think so many just don't give themselves time, permission to be quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
I
it.
yeah, I'm similar in that like the voices are getting louder. It's okay, you're not the only crazy one. um, but maybe can we talk about, because there are voices in our head and there are voices in our head. There's the like, the intuition, right? And then there's the ego, the
Yeah,
or the doubt, the fear that talks to you. How do you differentiate the two? Like, how would you differentiate what, which voice to listen to?
easy. So the voice of ego will not be a positive, encouraging, light-hearted, fun voice. It will be a criticizing, or you can't do that, or it'll be a much more yeah, whereas an intuition is always be encouraging, it'll always be light-hearted, it will always be, it's a very different vibration, a very different energy. So
Mm,
when you question it and go, well, is this encouraging me or is it doubt? If it's doubting, and it's the ego, it's the thoughts, it won't be intuition. It's very simple, and then there's a clear definition between the two. I just ask that question: what is this? How does this make me feel? Is it encouraging or is it doubting? And you can then pretty much work out.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you ever like, because this has happened to me before, so I'm just gonna ask you this question, where it felt like it was encouraging, but then there was this aspect like it was like this, the ego was pretending to be encouraging.
Intriguing.
No, okay, maybe it's just me. Okay, right. It
Yeah, I think it's don't listen to the voices, the thoughts, and just drop down into the heart. I think that's the easiest way, because if we're up here, then it's like it's thoughts, and we know that thoughts are basically not who we are. And it's basically an interpretation of what we're seeing. That's why thoughts are there. Thoughts are there to keep us safe.
mm,
Um, but whereas intuition, the heart, the soul, it's not like that at all. It's a much more deep sense of just knowing.
yeah.
And it's a very different, because it's not upstairs. It's well, the heart, the soul. It's within us, and it's a different feeling. So I mean, if something feels like it's pulling you from for me, it's feel like a pulling from the inside.
Mm,
It's up here, it's like, oh, this is exhausting when it's up here. I don't want to be up here, because that's not it. That's just the keeping us safe, and
yeah.
that's why thoughts there. I mean, at the end of the day, it is to keep on a primal. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Anyway. That's what thoughts are there. They're there to, is there a tiger coming? Do we need food? But it's
Yeah.
not soul leading when it's up, I call it the upstairs, but
Yeah. Upstairs. It's upstairs and downstairs. Be down here, don't be up here. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, do you journal, or is your quiet time mostly like in meditation, or just having connecting with nature?
I think because I tend to write every day anyway, that I don't need to make a point of sitting down and journaling, because I really like writing. So for me, it's a daily. It's always an article, something I'm doing. But I
Mm,
really, feet off on the beach or anywhere with earth, I have to be grounded, and we need to be connected to the earth. It's part of nature, so it's really important. So getting out of the head,
mm,
that's the fastest way for me.
yeah.
uh, and try not to listen to anything. So if anything does drop in, I normally don't have anywhere to write it down, but because it's usually when I'm walking, that things will drop in,
Yeah.
and oh, I wish I could write that down, but I don't want to walk with a phone, because I think then we're distracted again, and it's pulling us back into
Mm,
the mind. And so yeah, nature, being around nature, that's where all my inspiration. I
yeah.
think people would find that.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's a different level when you do meditation or having your quiet time outside compared to when you're inside the house.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you about writing. You're saying that you write every day. So, is this for your book or do you just write, like you were saying, you write articles and things like that? So, yeah, just intrigued to know what it is that you write every day.
Well, the memoir was 350,000 words for the first draft, massive, but it was a case of let's get all this down. So the first 6 months, that was the process of writing that. And then it took me all the way through COVID, so 3 years of editing. And the book was alive. It became like I felt like I was channeling messages for sure.
Wow.
It was alive. And I was told by a few friends who are mediums and various other things, whatever you do, don't stop editing this book. And I said, but I felt like a baby, wanted to throw the toys out the pram. I got so tired, but they went, no, because it's, don't you realize that they're channeling these messages through this memoir? And I went, I know, I'm feeling like that. So I kept going, just I did 4 edits through on my own, and it took me all the way through COVID, 3 years. So that was my biggest project because I felt this drive, this urgency that I just had to finish it. It was really important, not just for me, but everything goes out into the
Mm,
world. So I felt like I was doing it for a much
mm,
bigger reason.
yes.
But now that that's with somebody else, I knew there was a second book. So it's ideas for that at the moment that I'm mainly working on because it feels that I need to help women through the transition of not just breaking the molds of societal expectations, but the spiritual awakening which comes with that.
Mm,
And I felt that that needed to come before the memoir because a lot of women are struggling now with, going through this process.
yes.
But also I write for a magazine and I'm writing travel articles. So I'm very inspired by travel.
Yes.
It's felt like a big part of my soul awakening has been to travel. It feels like actually there's pilgrimages and all sorts of stuff I need to go on. So I think I'm moving into the writing a lot more about travel, but also how is that part of this second book? It's a big part.
Mm,
I have sort of a trip to India next year, which I didn't know I was going to do. And that's actually where I think I'm going to start really nutting down on this second book. Rather than staying at home and writing the book and then traveling, it has to be the other way around. And I realized, wow, my whole life's been like that. As a child, I knew I needed to go on this journey. I just knew, I didn't know what it was, but it was obviously a journey of acquiring this wisdom. That was the life journey.
mm,
So I need to keep going with that. I haven't changed inside. You're still the same. The way when you arrive as a soul, you've got a mission. And as a child, that was being shown that I'm a traveler and I need to travel to learn whatever I need to do. And then, oh, I need to write about that, but I can't stay at home either. I have to travel.
mm.
So maybe I just got to keep going.
And why not?
This is the third chapter. So children are older, and now this is the third chapter. Back to the travel. Let's see what messages and stuff come through. What I need to write about will be revealed along the way, I guess.
Uh,
Mm.
yeah. No, I love it. I love that you get to travel on your own now. So it's like different, the different types of traveling. Did you do much traveling before kids as well?
Yeah, I was an air hostess, but
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes,
yeah,
you
that
were.
was because I made a statement when I don't know what age I was. I want to be paid to travel the world. Those were my words, and I
Yeah.
didn't know how I was going to do that. And then I think careers book, we didn't have internet then,
Yes.
and I realized that yeah, I could work on a plane. So
Yeah.
it's not very glamorous, but it wasn't at all. But it did give me what I wanted, which was to travel.
Yeah.
To the point where I dropped out of university and chose to go and travel.
Hey,
Yeah, it was just I went, no, this is not right. I have to go, I have to travel.
I love
Um,
it. I love
that
it. Yeah. So traveling really has been pretty much your life. Like, before children is like air hostess traveling, then you still traveling with children, like
yeah,
expat life.
Yeah.
I mean, not obviously not as frequent as when you're an air hostess, but still traveling a lot.
I did
Yeah.
try. There's a big part of the bank
Yeah.
balance on travel, but also like things I wanted to go and study and learn. My husband allowed me the freedom of just going, and I look back and go, wow, I really did follow everything I wanted to because it was the feeling was so strong inside. Like this is, I need to go and do this, and fortunately, I felt like he was my, how can you put it? They talk about soul contracts.
Mm.
I believe that his role in my life up until now has been to allow me this freedom of this journey. And actually, if I go back and when I was writing the book, one of the tarot readers I went to when I was about 14 had said, you're going to go around the world on this mission of finding wisdom and knowledge. Like she already said that then, and it was one of the things I mentioned in the book. Wow, all these people that came along to show me this path that actually I did end up going on. It was amazing. So,
I love that.
mm,
Can we talk a bit about your relationship with your husband? Because I think for a lot of, I mean, I know a lot of women where the husbands won't give that much freedom, to allow you to explore and do all the things, right? I'm also very lucky. My husband's just like, you just do whatever you want to do. You don't need to go back to work. I can build my business and do all those things and just explore and all the, all my spiritual awakening, crazy stuff that happens. He's very supportive, and although he doesn't understand, he's just
mm,
like, okay, he's just like, okay, right, your light
mm,
language came through. All right, cool. I don't understand, but hey, you
yeah.
keep doing what you're doing. So I want to ask you, like, yeah, like what's the essence of having a relationship where you can, like, where you both respect each other so much where you can give in that freedom.
Mm.
Mm,
I think it's unusual. I think you and I sound like we've got very similar husbands, and I think it's quite rare.
it is
So
very.
I think they're obviously really connected to who we are. They've there's a soul connection there. There's something that's allowing that understanding because they don't really understand. Like my husband's the same as yours. It's like they haven't got a clue. But it's also not up to us to pull them on the spiritual wherever we are. I mean, we're not above them or below. There's no, we're all equal. But I look back and go, wow, it's like when I said we needed to go somewhere or do something, or he would never go, well, he'd just go, are you sure? And he would trust. And it was only ever intuition that I was following. And I look back and go, wow, he's a really rational, black and white, logical, he's in finance. And it didn't make any sense to him, half my decisions. And yet he ran with them every single time. So there's this trust. So it's the trust, I think, the element of trust. So they trust that you know what you're doing, even though you might appear that you don't. But it always works out in the end. So I guess they get a bit more confident. But also, I can't imagine not being allowed to be myself through the whole process when I look back. I think being at home as stay-at-home mum was never on the cards for me. It was never something that I envisaged or even wanted.
Yeah.
So had he not allowed that freedom, I would have been pretty miserable. So maybe it was just like a give and take. It was easier just to allow,
Mm,
and he does his thing, I did my thing, and it worked. Whereas I can't imagine it not being like that.
mm. And I just love that, hearing that freedom you have in your relationship with your husband makes me so happy because the amount of just people around me, people that I see, that there's so many that don't have that freedom. There's always this constraint, that control, that
Yeah,
kind of like game playing to some extent.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's beautiful that to just tell people that these relationships do exist, where you
yeah,
can have that freedom. You just go about and be yourself, fully expressed, and it's okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's how I want to see. Yeah, it's why I want to share this book because I want women to see that it's their divine right to be able to be who they are.
Mm,
Equally, the same for their partner. It's
Yeah.
we're in a relationship, but we're still individuals, and the freedom of expression to be who we are and do what we want, I think it should still be there. And as you say, you hear so many horror stories where there's so much control in relationships, and it's not healthy for either parties, and yet it seems to be more the norm than what I've got, what you sound like you've got. It's like,
Yeah.
glad I am where I am. But I
Yeah.
think there's obviously there's a change got to happen. That because women are not happy. There's a lot of women that are really not happy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's crazy. We're here for a short time. We want to just be fully expressing who we are inside. And this is where the soul, the intuition is important to follow, because that's the expression that's trying to push through.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. Oh, I could talk to you all day, but I'm just looking at the time, so we do have to wrap up. So I've got two questions left for you. The first question that I want to ask you is, having gone through all the things, like your beautiful journey that you've shared with us, and I know there's way more than what you've shared. What is, if you can go back to a younger version of Nikki, what's the let me get my words out. What is the key piece of advice you would give young Nikki?
Do you mean before marriage or at marriage or
A
young?
younger version, like, maybe when you were a teenager, like if you can go back to just tell her something.
Yeah, I think maybe, I mean, I did follow everything I wanted to, but perhaps not worry so much about the end point. I think I always wanted to, there was this world out there that I couldn't wait to get to and do all these things and this, but I wanted to get there too quickly.
Mm,
To just like slow down and just enjoy the ride. So yes, I did do everything I wanted to, and I followed all the leads and etc. But there was always a little bit of, I suppose, anxiety, stress going, oh, I want to get there too quickly. And
yeah.
it's like sit back and enjoy the ride, enjoy the cruisy ride, because the whole point I realized was, oh my God, it's a cliche, but it is the journey, not the destination.
Mm,
The biggest
yeah.
cliche, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Slow down, look around, and enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I did a pretty good job of that. I mean, was an air hostess, so I had a lot of fun. But yeah, to not look ahead and just be,
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that.
And that's
Thank
the
you.
same now. It's the same now, isn't it?
Yeah. So
We,
important. So
yeah,
important. We're always looking. I mean, I know that sometimes I do this still, is like, I want to be there. And like, you're just thinking and worrying, but you know that you just gotta be in the space and
yeah,
learn and enjoy and be present.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you miss the opportunities that are being revealed that you didn't know were going to open themselves up. And that's the thing, is you can really miss those signposts and those openings and those synchronicities if you're always looking ahead and rushing.
Yeah.
And they are there to come in. They need room to arrive. I mean, I would say to this people, what do you mean they need room to arrive? But they do. They actually, you need to leave gaps in your schedules for the unexpected.
Yes.
Otherwise, they'll just disappear or might come back again later. But you do miss them. So
Yeah. You take the scenic route.
yeah.
Right. Uh, and Nikki, just one last question for you. What is currently setting your soul on fire?
Oh, okay. The next trip. Seriously, it's the next trip. It is, because that's when I'm most alive, when I'm traveling and meeting new people and new destinations. And it seems to be, it sets my soul on fire. That's why I'm a natural nomad, I think.
Yeah, love it. I love
And yeah,
traveling, so I'm like,
really.
yes, yay. And India's the next trip, is that, or is
It's
it?
actually, it's actually UK and Austria
Oh,
with skiing and meeting up with my mum, my mad mum. Well,
yeah.
she's not mad. She's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In India in February. But that again, that was an unexpected opportunity to write and travel, and I'm starting to move into that direction of helping small businesses with retreats. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going, but I kind of have a vision. which I
Yeah.
won't share because then it won't happen. Got to keep a little bit of a secret.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. It's been such a fun and, insightful conversation. If people want to find out more about you, how they can work with you, more about your book, where's the best place to find you?
I'm a bit of an I'm always evolving and changing as I'm stepping into who I am. So obviously Messenger, Facebook, NikkiCornfield.com is my website, but really reach out through Messenger and just connect and we'll have a conversation. I like to be very fluid and open. There's lots of things I can help people with. So, and the
Perfect.
book, yeah, the book, well, I'll just keep updating because it's not here yet.
And it will be here in perfect timing, as we know.
That's one thing I had to let go of because I was like, it's going to be published by this date. And I went, no, it's not actually going to be published by that date at all. Okay, just go with the timing as it's meant to be and don't try and push things all the time.
Yeah, no, I totally resonate with that message that you just said. um, Thank you so much, Nikki. It's been a pleasure. And
Thanks for
yeah,
having me.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.